Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at something that has literally fascinated humanity for thousands of years. We're talking about the mysterious, totally captivating concept of the third eye. It's one of those rare ideas that perfectly bridges the ancient mystical world and modern science, and today, we're going to unpack exactly what is going on behind the center of your forehead. So I guess we have to start with the obvious question, right? What exactly is the third eye? Is it just a metaphor? Is it an actual physical part of your brain? Or maybe it's just a quirk of how our vision actually works? Because the crazy thing is, you'll find this concept appearing absolutely everywhere. We're talking ancient Hindu texts, the journals of 17th century philosophers, all the way to modern neuroscience and the really fascinating science of visual optics.
Okay, so here is our roadmap for exploring this. First, we'll look at the biology of the third eye. Second, the Ajna chakra explained. Third, opening the third eye. Fourth, the symptoms of awakening. And finally, the third eye illusion. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the biology of the third eye.
Deep inside your brain, right in the dead center, there's this tiny, soybean-sized endocrine gland called the pineal gland. Historically, philosophers like René Descartes, for instance, believed this was literally the seat of the soul. But biologically speaking, it's responsible for producing melatonin. It basically acts like a built-in light meter for your body. Light cues from your eyes tell this gland when to stop producing melatonin, and then darkness triggers it to pump melatonin out. That's what regulates your circadian rhythm and, makes you feel sleepy.
Now here is where it gets like a genuine medical mystery. Over time, this tiny gland actually develops calcium spots. In fact, it has the highest calcification rate of any tissue in your entire body. Medical science has a few theories about why this happens. It could honestly just be a natural part of aging, or maybe it's related to the high metabolic activity of the gland itself. But there are also theories linking this calcification to chronic conditions, things like Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia, and severe migraines. And when it calcifies, it might not produce melatonin as effectively, which totally makes sense of why older adults often struggle with sleep rhythm disruptions.
And that brings us to a really fascinating and honestly pretty controversial debate. On one hand, medical science and major health organizations firmly state that fluoride is a safe, absolutely key component in preventing tooth decay. But on the other hand, alternative practitioners argue that fluoride is naturally attracted to calcium and therefore leads to increased pineal gland calcification. So they advocate for decalcifying the gland by avoiding fluoridated water and toothpaste entirely. Now, human research hasn't clinically confirmed that avoiding fluoride actually decalcifies the gland, but it remains a massive talking point in holistic wellness circles.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the Ajna chakra explained. Let's shift gears from microscopic biology to esoteric spirituality.
In traditional Hindu and yogic systems, the third eye is known as the Ajna chakra. It's the sixth energy center located right between your eyebrows, and it's heavily associated with the color indigo. But here is a super crucial distinction. Classical teachings do not describe this as some center for supernatural fantasy or hallucination. Actually, scratch that. It's more like the mind's ultimate organizing center for intuition, clarity, and inner wisdom. Think of it as a filter for mental noise. It allows you to achieve really sharp perception and observe reality without all that distortion or fear.
But, we don't just want an active chakra. The goal is a balanced one. An overactive ajna can actually lead to obsessive thoughts, constant overthinking, and basically living inside your own imagination rather than practical reality. On the flip side, an underactive state, that manifests as indecision, confusion, and just heavy brain fog. So a balanced third eye is really about achieving clear, incredibly grounded mental perception.
That takes us to Section 3, opening the third eye.
So, how do seekers actually go about deliberately activating this spiritual center? Well, practitioners use a traditional sequence of practices. It almost always starts with deep meditation, where you focus specifically on the space between the eyebrows and visualize a bright indigo light. Another really common tool is chanting the Om mantra. The idea there is to create a literal physical vibration right in the center of your forehead. Yoga inversions like headstands are also used to increase blood flow to the brain. And it's not just Eastern traditions either. Western esoteric traditions have their own methods for this, which range from ceremonial magic rituals to actually reciting Enochian angelic prayers.
Let's look at Section 4, Symptoms of Awakening. What does it actually feel like? The reported symptoms are wild because they often start out purely physical and then progress into the profoundly spiritual. Practitioners frequently describe a literal physical pressure or a tingling warmth right on their forehead. Then, as their perception shifts, some report seeing colorful auras around people, or even hearing cosmic sounds. They call this anhad nod. It sounds like distant ringing or stringed instruments. From there, it escalates to incredibly vivid lucid dreams, vastly enhanced intuition, and ultimately, this profound feeling of universal oneness. It's like the boundary between the self and the universe just completely dissolves.
Which brings us to our final lens, Section 5, the third eye illusion. Let's look at modern visual optics.
In vision science, there is this fascinating concept known as the cyclopean eye. Because we have two physical eyes facing forward, our brain has to perform something called binocular fusion. It is continuously merging two completely separate images into one single 3D view. This creates a theoretical axis of visual direction centered exactly midway between your two physical eyes. So, functionally speaking, from your brain's perspective, you essentially calculate the visual world as if you were looking out of one single central cyclopean eye. Now, researchers at Monash University recently documented how you can actually see a manifestation of this for yourself. You absolutely have to try this interactive experiment later, maybe next time you're in the bathroom. Stand about 20 to 50 centimeters from a mirror. Look straight into your own reflection. Then intentionally cross your eyes to free fuse your opposing pupils. Essentially, you are forcing your right eye to look at its left reflection and your left eye to look at its right reflection.
So what is actually happening in your visual cortex when you hold this gaze? Researchers officially call this progression third eye rivalry. When you cross your eyes in the mirror like that, your brain receives totally conflicting information and struggles to fuse the two faces together. You'll experience what's called multi-stable visual rivalry. Basically, the image will shift, it'll alternate, and parts of your own face will actually seem to disappear. Eventually, the peripheral faces suppress, and your brain synthesizes the image into a vivid, highly stable illusion of a single central eye staring right back at you. No way, right? It's literally an optical third eye.
Honestly, this optical quirk of the human brain might just explain why the imagery of a central eye is so deeply embedded across global cultures. It's like a giant puzzle, tying the biological, the spiritual, and the optical themes together perfectly. In fact, the vision researchers at Monash University appropriately ended their scientific study with this incredibly resonant quote from the 13th century Persian mystic Shams Tabrizi. He said, "The summary of the advice of all prophets is this: find yourself a mirror."
And that brings us right back to where we started, leaving us with a really profound question to ponder. So, what does this all mean? Is the third eye primarily a biological gland regulating our sleep? Is it a spiritual center dedicated to filtering our reality for pure mental clarity? Or is it just a fascinating quirk of visual optics? Well, perhaps it's a beautiful, deeply intertwined blend of all three, an enduring symbol of our ultimate, universal desire to perceive reality more clearly. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep seeking clarity, and I'll see you next time.